most people who've struggled with addiction, they don't even realize until years after they've overcome the addiction how much it really impacted their everyday life, how much that addiction impacted every decision, every thought, every relationship, every social interaction. That addiction was really driving every single waking moment of their life. And so for the people who are addicted to fitness to the point where it's just taking over every waking moment, you really have to work on getting them to understand that you're hurting your progress by not giving your body the rest that it needs.
For me personally, also.
I'm like, no.
From there.
You're a saint. The Doing the Work podcast is brought to you by some amazing sponsors who we're very grateful for that allow us to do this amazing podcast that brings you information that helps you to be more connected and be more healthy and helps you grow in your life. Strive Strength and Conditioning empowers people to be happier, healthier, and more successful in life. They help you to crush it in the gym so you can crush it even better outside of the gym. They've got top-notch coaching and an even better community. If you're looking to up your game in your fitness or your healthy habits, this is the place to go. Check them out at www.strivebastrop.com. All right, welcome to the Doing the Work podcast. I'm your host, Athan Schindler, where I talk to people who inspire me and share those conversations with you. And I'm excited today to have Jordan Syatt on the show. Jordan, I've been probably following you on Instagram for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. And I'm so drawn to your content because you're just like, no bullshit. You shoot people straight, you understand the science, and you just give it to people in really digestible and understandable forms. And you're funny as shit. And so all of that together just makes your feed just so entertaining and useful. So I appreciate what you're doing for the world.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. And I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you having me on. It means a lot to me.
Awesome. Well, so we chit-chatted a little bit before this, and you're in Dallas, Texas, and I'm just outside of Austin, Texas. So we've got the Texas connection going on.
Let's go. I love it, man.
Well, for the audience, I always like to let the guests kind of like, how do you like when someone asks you like, who are you, or like what you do, like how do you describe yourself?
Yeah, it depends how long you want me to go for, because I could go for a while. But I mean, I always start with, I'm a short, bald, nerdy like dude who likes to lift weights and do jujitsu. Like, just like I like to do like fitness stuff basically, and I like to help people who might not like doing fitness stuff make it more accessible to them, because the reality is most people know they need to be doing it, even if they don't want to be doing it. So I just try and break it down into a way that's simple, easy, and relatively fun. And I say relatively because, sometimes fitness isn't fun, and the vast majority of the time you might not want to do it, but you have to. It's really important. So my goal is just help people do it, even and especially if they don't want to, and incorporate it into their life in a way that is easier for them and more realistic, rather than fitness taking over their whole life. It's just a part of their life.
I love that. One of the things that I like to say to people is like, if your whole life is revolved around what you're doing in the gym, then you've got this thing completely backwards. You should be spending your time in the gym so you can do all these amazing things in your life. And you saying that you're trying to make it more enjoyable for people, or for people who don't even like it, I think is so important, because consistency is everything. And if you're hating what you're doing or you're miserable doing it, you're probably not going to be that consistent with it.
That's exactly right, man. I mean, and so much of what people think they should be doing is they're looking for the perfect program, like the best workout, the best diet, but you just hit the nail on the head. It's all about consistency. And if you can't be consistent with something, it doesn't matter how good the program on paper is. If you're not consistent with it, then it's going to be awful. Like, you're not going to get any results. I've always said that a B+ or a B- program followed consistently is going to get you way better results than an A+ program followed inconsistently. And so for me, it's just, how can I help you find a way to be consistent with it? And one of the most important things I've realized, when I was a younger coach, I made a big mistake. And a lot of coaches today I see making this mistake now, is they always talk about, well, you've just got to enjoy the process. You've got to enjoy the process. Find something you love. And I always know that when someone's saying that, they haven't worked with that many clients yet, because when you've really worked with a lot of, especially general population clients, you know that not everyone's going to love it. And that's
Right.
okay. Like, we can't force them to love it. And the more you say you just have to find something you love, the more they feel alienated and like they're doing something wrong. The reality is you might not love it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's just you have to sort of embrace that suck, get it done, and do what you can do consistently. So if that's 3 days a week of strength and then walking on your other days, amazing. I would rather you do that than nothing at all.
Yeah, I have some like big three things that I try to talk to my clients about, but I'm curious, do you have like non-negotiable aspects of a program that just kind of have to be in there for it to be effective?
I do. It really does depend on the person in terms of how it's programmed, but there's always some type of strength training. There's always some type of movement, what like just walking or like some type of cardio. And there's always some type of focus on nutrition. Also, there's always some type of a focus on sleep, right? But
Yeah.
these are very general categories. But like, so for someone who's brand new, maybe morbidly obese and they've been sedentary for their whole life, what I'll probably have them focusing on first is just walking. Like that'll be number one. I just want you to get steps in. And if you're going from 700 steps a day, that's your starting point. I'll try and get you to like 1500, then go from 1500 to like 3000. And my goal will be for that person probably to get them to about 5000 before I get them to incorporate another habit, which at that point would probably be more nutrition focused. So get them walking 5,000 a day, and then I'd try and get them to incorporate more protein in their meals. And a lot of it is about adding things in as opposed to taking things out, right? So like if I say, you aren't allowed to eat this or you aren't allowed to do this, well, all of a sudden that's all they want to do is like, you can't
Right.
eat this anymore. So instead of me taking things out, I just say, well, add in more protein. It's like, yeah, you can still have that treat if you want, but first just eat the protein first. And oftentimes that will fill them up more and get them more satiated to the point where maybe they don't want it anymore. And that will improve their habits as a result.
Yeah, I've heard that said in some way, and it might be someone else's quote, but it was said something like, "We don't stop bad habits, we replace them with good habits." And so it
Yes.
sounds like exactly what you're saying. It's like, okay, if you just start plugging in that thing that's more healthy for you, you're probably going to inherently kind of stop some of the other things that aren't serving you as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you look at the research around habit formation, it's much easier instead of just telling someone to stop something to take a habit and replace it with something else. And understanding that it's not usually done on the first go and the first effort. It's usually a combination of trial and error, and practicing to make that switch until it actually does happen over the course of weeks, months, or years.
I saw that a lot. So I used to be a social worker, and I worked in the field of addictions for a little while. And you see that with folks who have like any kind of addiction, right? Like they have similar behaviors, but they've kind of just replaced one that wasn't serving them so much with something like fitness or like spirituality or something like that. They just kind of like swap one for the other, and it works better for them.
I'm sure you've seen that on a level that most people haven't, especially in coming from an addiction background. So many people, if they're fortunate enough to overcome an addiction, which like is not really discussed very much in modern day society. Like we don't dive into addiction culture, which is a real issue. But a lot
Sure.
of the people who are fortunate enough to overcome it, they go, sometimes religion will be like that. They'll just go super hard into religion. Sometimes they'll go super hard into fitness. And you see people, it's not uncommon to see someone in the gym who's just jacked out of their mind and absolutely obsessed with fitness, who's really struggled with addiction in the past. And that you're exactly right. They swapped habits. And that is now their outlet. You're exactly right.
Yeah. So that actually, while you were saying that, it kind of makes me think a lot about how sometimes, fitness, health, even nutrition, you name any aspect of it, there can be a point where it becomes unhealthy.
Mm.
And do you have experience with that, or like do you work with people where you're in my world, there's sometimes some people I have to like rein them in. Like there's some people like you said, let's just add, let's get out there, let's do a couple things, and then some people are like, whoa, like you can't work out 7 times a day, like you can't, like
Yeah.
you can't go that hard, or it's not what we mentioned. You can't be consistent. It's not sustainable.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have personal history with this. And I think, so basically when you break it down, there's 2 different types of people in fitness, just generally. Obviously there's more, but generally you have the person who it's very difficult to get them to go to the gym. Like to get motivated to work out is very difficult. And the idea of getting up and going to the gym is massively overwhelming and taxing emotionally for them. And the other person is the person who the idea of taking a rest day is petrifying for them. Like not going to the gym is very difficult for them to the point where it causes them anxiety. It makes them get really nervous and worried. And when I was younger, so I grew up wrestling. I started wrestling when I was 8 years old. I did that all the way through high school. And that's sort of the mindset that was ingrained within me. Also because, I'm super competitive and I love doing this type of stuff. I also come from a family where I'm the only athlete and everyone else in my family is morbidly obese. So I sort of have this idea in my mind where like I will end up like that if I don't take care of my body. So that's one of the struggles I had earlier in my career from probably about 14 to about 22. I would work out constantly. I had real issues with food and disordered eating habits. I would just the idea of eating anything bad was a huge issue for me mentally and emotionally. And no surprise, that's so much of what my content is based around now because I realize so many people do struggle with that. So in terms of the people who just they feel like they have to work out every day, multiple times a day, they're going to lose all their progress. You actually sort of have to approach these two people similarly. The person who's struggling to get to the gym at all and the person who's struggling to take a rest day. It's similar approaches, just with sort of opposite end goals here, which is it's sort of like horseshoe theory where you have two people at complete opposite ends of the spectrum who meet in the middle. They meet at the same, they have the same issue or the same end goal. So for the people who really struggle, it's you have to really help them understand working out 2 times a day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, 7 days a week. It's not only is it not going to help you make any more progress, it's actually going to hurt your progress. It's going to hurt your health. And I'm not even just talking about injuries and joint issues and bone issues and muscle issues, which will happen. But mental health has become a huge discussion in recent years, especially in talking about addiction again. Most people who've struggled with addiction, they don't even realize until years after they've overcome the addiction how much it really impacted their everyday life, how much that addiction impacted every decision, every thought, every relationship, every social interaction. That addiction was really driving every single waking moment of their life. And so for the people who are addicted to fitness to the point where it's just taking over every waking moment, you really have to work on getting them to understand that you're hurting your progress by not giving your body the rest that it needs.
Yeah, it's like two pieces of that, because one is okay, where do you take it from here? If you're working out, let's just use the 3 times a day thing. If you want to continue to get results somehow, what are you going to do? Go 4 times, 5 times? Are you, are you going to go to some sort of drug to help you? Or, what is it that is, and beyond that, like you said, the science is clear. You break down while you're training, you rebuild and get the results during rest and recovery, through your sleep, through your nutrition, through those off days. And if some people just don't get that. They just think, no, you get better in the gym. And so the more I'm in the gym, the better I'm getting, which is just a lie.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And one of the things I've realized in terms of the behavior of these people who struggle with going every day, multiple times a day is when you ask them, are you happy with your current progress? Usually the answer is no. They're not happy with where they are. And what I've realized is it's not that they're focused on getting better results by going more. It's that they think that if they go less, they will lose their current progress. They're not happy with where they are now at all. They still want to get better, but they think that if they go less, they will get fat, they will lose strength, they'll lose their muscle definition. And even though they don't look the way they want to, in their minds, if I don't go this much or more, then I will look way worse. Because if this is how I look now, then how would I ever look better by going less? Yeah. And so it's all done out of a fear of losing progress rather than really trying to gain progress.
Yeah, and that's funny. After 24 years now of being a trainer / coach, one of the things I've realized, and I say this all the time, is I rarely meet a client who is satisfied. Really oh no, I'm good. I'm exactly where I want to be. Everything is just optimized. You almost never hear that. So, and that's just part of the human condition, I think. But as someone who's a coach, I have to understand that and not feed into it. It's easy for them to say, oh, I want to work on this and I want to work on that. So like you mentioned earlier, an inexperienced coach could get sucked into that. Like, oh, okay, let me make you happy by like giving you more programs or whatnot, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that younger coaches struggle with is they're young, they're excited, and they really want to help people. But also you have to take into account that they're trying to make money, right? Like it's a business. And
Hmm.
maybe they see other friends or other people around their age starting to make more money, or they're on social media and people are posting about how much money they make and they're on these like private jets, whatever it is. It's skewing their mentality of what's actually normal and real. And so they're like, well, if my client is saying they want more, 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 my client's going to leave me and not pay me if I don't give them what they want. So instead of doing what they know is right because of what they've studied and what the science shows, they give them inappropriate amounts of training volume and intensity just so the client doesn't stop paying them. And that feeds into a very, very big problem we see in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I love about your content, right? Is like I was saying, like you have this like no bullshit, like, you know, and like, what I love is that like you you have a very clear sense of who you are and what works, and you just like rock that. And I think that that's what's the key to being like a great professional is like holding the line, you know, not being people pleasing or not telling people what they want to hear. But what I love about my military background is like, you know, when I'm fucked up, a guy in the military can just say, "Hey, you're fucked up. Here's why," you know, and I'll be like, "Thank you," you know, like I'm good, you know, and they'll just tell you, and or like, "No, that's not true. This is accurate." So, and I really see that a lot in your content.
Thank you, man. I mean, I very much, I think it's important to say like so much of how I come across now is because of mistakes I made as a young coach. So I made the mistake of being a young coach and giving clients what they wanted rather than what they needed. I made all of these mistakes, and so it's easier for me to spot it now because it's like, oh yeah, I did that. I was a stupid coach. I made stupid mistakes, and I still do stupid stuff now. And I'm sure in 5, 7, 10 years, I'll look back on what I'm doing today and be like, God, I was such an idiot, right? But like that's part of growth. And so I think one of the things that I want to do is I want to be open about it and honest so that hopefully younger coaches going through it can make the better decisions earlier than I did.
Yeah, well, I love that. It's clear to me that that's strong in your messaging. Well, while we're talking about it, so one of the tenets of this show and parts of my purpose is optimal health. And so when I say the term optimal health, what does that mean to you, or like how would you describe that?
Oh man, that's a tough one, right? I really do think optimal is going to change per individual. Like it's not the same for everybody. Um, when I think about it, it's funny. Do you remember the wellness wheel? Like, did you ever see the wellness wheel in
Yeah,
school? Where
yeah,
it's like that's sort of where my mind goes, which is sort of corny and childish, but like it actually when you look at the wellness wheel, and I don't remember, I know interpersonal and intrapersonal and fit and all, I know there's like all these, I think there's like 7 different components of it or something.
right. I don't remember them
Um,
either.
but that's where my mind goes in terms of generally speaking, I'd like to see a balance of everything. Where, for example, the person who's working out 4 hours a day, they're not optimal health because their mental side clearly isn't healthy. And maybe physically they're healthy, but the mental side is driving them crazy. And they don't have good health in their life. They don't have good interpersonal relationships. They don't have good intrapersonal relationships. They don't have maybe no work-life balance. And I think balance is a separate discussion because honestly, I'm not the biggest proponent of balance as it's been promoted throughout social media and like 21-year-old influencers who like don't have real responsibilities. Like you need balance. Da, 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 da. It's like,
Yeah.
here's my morning routine. It's like, great. Like you have literally nothing going on in your life. So it's very easy for you to do this. But, like, so I'm not the biggest. And also for whatever it's worth, like if you really want to achieve something great in life, I don't think balance is realistic. I think if you really want to excel, be the best or one of the best in something, balance is overrated. I think you have to go all in on something and really go hard on it. For someone who realistically has optimal health, they're probably not what we see, at least in the American culture of like massively successful from like a CEO, for example, like CEO of a crazy super, they're probably a CEO of a super high level business with thousands of employees, probably doesn't have optimal health, just to be honest, because they can't optimize their health with all of the stress and all of the responsibility and all of the time and all of the travel and all of the business meetings, like they probably can't. So I think in order to achieve optimal health, you need more balance. But then the question is like, how much balance do you want based on what you want to achieve? So that's sort of where my mind goes. I know I'm all over the place, but that's what I think about.
No, I think you nailed it because that's how I think about it too. It's like optimal health depends on what is your goal and can you be
Mhm.
successful in that specific goal and are you are you functioning, and then are you balance like you said isn't possible depending like you said like well you're for example a 5 times world record holder in powerlifting, right? During
Mhm.
that time you were probably training a lot harder in one aspect of your life and then just trying to manage the other aspects, your relationships,
Correct.
your spirituality, your mental health, but that was optimal for what you were trying to do, as opposed to just going off the deep end on only lifting, and not trying to balance it in, some way.
So I'm probably going to butcher this quote, but one of my really good mentors that I had from the time I was a young kid, he said something to me that has very much proven true. It's to the effect of out of work, sleep, family, friends, and health, out of those five, work, sleep, family, friends, and health, you can only ever really choose three at any one time. And probably if you want to get really good at one, only two. Right. So, and he said that to me when I was like 19 or 20. And I was like going into the peak of my powerlifting career. And I was really wanting to build a name for myself in the fitness industry. And I didn't understand it. Like I didn't have the context or the life experience to know. Now, over a decade later, I get it. And he was right. Where there were times when I went all in on my business and my fitness went to shit and I lost friendships as a result of it because I was so focused on that. And then as I've gotten more focused on my own health and fitness, like other things have slowed down, or as I focus more on my wife, other things slow down on the other end. And so that's where I sort of think balance is really, it's not realistic. I don't think it is. You have to choose what you want to focus on and allow that to be what is most important to you and maybe allow to incorporate the other things, but you can't expect to improve in everything at the same time. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, it's impossible. And I heard someone on a podcast, and I can't remember, I think his name was Jesse something, who said the same exact thing that you just said about like, look, you can prioritize and focus on just like 2 or 3 things. So life's about trade-offs,
Yeah.
and one of my values is prioritize what matters. So what I choose to focus on, might even change day to day depending on what fires pop up or anything. But overall, you kind of have to put a stake in the ground, say that's what I'm marching towards, and get to walking, and everything. You
Yeah.
might have to say no to some things. Well, so you mentioned your wife, and so I also noticed that you guys are expecting. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that. I think August due date, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. August due date. Thank you,
Awesome.
man.
Well, I'm an August baby myself, so I already,
Oh, let's go.
yeah. So
When's your birthday? August what?
August 6th.
Okay, got it. So ours is August 16th. All
Okay.
right.
All right. Well, that's awesome. But so speaking of kind of what we're talking about and prioritizing what matters and like how there's trade-offs in life, as a successful professional, someone who's well respected in your industry, and you've clearly got things, a way of doing things. How does something like getting married and expecting a child and things like that change what you prioritize, or does it at all?
Oh, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. I mean, one of the reasons, so I don't remember if it was, I think it was before we started recording, I was telling you we moved from New York to Texas in April. And there were many reasons why, one of which, like I said, just New York became a shithole during the pandemic. I was just like, didn't want to be there anymore. The other reason is, so I knew I didn't want to raise a family in New York City. It was great in my mid-20s and like grinding and building a business. It's the best place to be, I think, if you really want to build a business. It's just like the energy in New York is unlike, and I've lived all over the world. I've lived in New York, I've lived in Israel, I've lived in Boston, I've lived in Delaware, I've traveled all over the world. I've been in California, everywhere. The best place I've ever been to build a business is New York, without question. But I got to a point where in my business where I was like, I'll say a quote that one of my another mentor said to me when I was about 24 years old. He said, "Jordan, there comes a point where making money solves more problems, until you get to a point where making more money will cause more problems. And that hit home with me, and I'll never forget that. As my buddy Pat Flynn, he said it to me when I was like 24, 25. And there reached a point when I was living in New York when I was like, it wasn't necessarily about money. It was more actually about time spent working. And I was like, working more for the last few years has solved many problems. But if I work any more now, or even try to maintain this current output, it's going to cause more problems. And I was like, I had a lot of mental and emotional stress of staying in New York, because being in New York for me, there's something immediately associated with New York with work. Like, it's hard for me to wake up or in New York without just grind. That's what you do. You're in New York, work, work, work. That's just like what you do. And so one of the reasons I wanted to move out of there was because that environment is difficult for me to relax in. It's difficult for me to focus on my wife. It's difficult for me to prioritize family when work is just encompassing everything that I do there. So we wanted to leave there for that reason as well. And so now living in Dallas, it's amazing. I can prioritize my wife. We have breakfast every morning. We have dinner every night. We'll go down to the gym and we'll work out, not do the same workouts, but we'll work out at the same time. We sit down, we watch TV we spend so much more. We spend like triple the amount of time together now than we did when we lived in New York. And there's so much more space here. So in New York, we had a 500 square foot apartment, but we spent so little time together. Now we have a much bigger apartment, and like she works and I work and we're all over the place, but we spend way more time together. So it's really nice that I was able to figure out I need to put myself in an environment that fosters what I need to prioritize. So yeah, absolutely. And thinking about, having a kid and all of that makes me just very glad that I'm now in a position where I can make that my priority and make that happen.
Do you perceive things as like, this is kind of like a new status quo for you? Or is this like, do you see that there might be a time where you've got to like flip the switch again and then go grind for a while? Or is this kind of what you're trying to create as like your new, status?
I'm not old, but I've been around enough to know that life can throw you weird curveballs and you never know what's going to happen. So if something happens and I need to flip the switch and grind, like I still got that. I can do it. Yeah. So I would prefer not to be honest. I would prefer, like, as of right now, I'm training jujitsu 5-6 times a week. I'm working out several times a week and spending a lot of time with my wife, and I'm sort of coasting with my business, to be frank about it. Like, I do three podcasts a day usually, and it's funny, like what sounds like a lot to some people at this point for me is just like, it's very little. I do 3 podcasts a day, some Instagram posts, and that's pretty much it, which takes about, 5 to 7 hours of work, but that's a light day. It used to be like, I used to take Adderall like candy because like that's what I would do in New York to try and stay up for as long as I could to get as much work as done as possible. And I'm not bragging about that. I don't want anyone to do that, but it's the truth. In order to put out as much content as I did for so many years, I was abusing Adderall, and I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I don't want to hurt my body. Like, I want to be here so I can be here for my wife and my kids.
Right. It goes back to that optimal piece when you start to realize, okay, there's stuff that I'm doing that I've felt like I needed to do, but it's not helping to be me a better human being. It's not helping me, ultimately you can't sustain that. Well, okay. So, speaking of, so again, like I like to, I speak to people who I know are doing like things at a high level, and to try to capture like, do you have like daily habits that you do? Like, again, maybe they're non-negotiables or things that you kind of rotate through, but are there things that you like really try to get in every day to help you to perform at your highest level that aren't necessarily your work, other things, supporting habits?
Yeah. So, it's really changed over the years depending on what my focus is, right? So what I want to prioritize has dictated what my daily habits were. So when I was the most productive with my business, the best daily habit I ever had was, and I still have the journal here. I haven't done it in a while, but like right here, I have the journal that I would use. And I have like 15 of these just all around my apartment, but I have one that's still I'm using. But every morning I would wake up and the very first thing that I would do is I would write down my daily action list, like the things I had to get done that day, which in essence looks like a to-do list. But a lot of people, they make a to-do list and it's like 50 things. And that was I learned very quickly that wasn't good for me. So I called it my like 5-3-1 or my 3-2-1, whichever what it was. And basically, the number one was the top one. It was like a pyramid. So the number one, I called it my do or die priority. That was the one thing I had to do every single day, no matter what, that had to get done. Some days it was writing an article for my website. Some days it was getting several Instagram posts done. Some days it was writing my client programs. Whatever it was, that was the one thing that by the end of the day, I had to get that done. And if nothing else got done, at least the do or die was done. Then the next one I had was my daily medication. So I had one do or die priority. I had 3 daily medications. And these were things that were important and needed to get done, but weren't the do or die. Like they don't have to be done today. Like they were important and maybe I should start working on them. Maybe it was planning out content for the next couple of days. Maybe it was doing some research. Like maybe I hadn't done some research in a couple of days. I needed to sit down and actually read some research papers. But these were the 3 things that I had to do for my daily medication. And then I had the last set, which was the 5, and this was what I called my nap time activities. These were things that I could do instead of procrastinating. So oftentimes it was answering client emails, answering DMs on Instagram, planning out content, easy things for me to do. I could lie on a couch and I could do it instead of just turning on the TV. And again, like these were the things that I did when I was the most focused on my business, and it massively, massively helped my productivity and my time management. So it was the do or die, daily medication, nap time activities. And that for me was just, it worked unbelievably well. But now my priority isn't my business, so I don't really do that as much anymore. But if it comes to a point where I'm like, hey, I've got to get my shit together, I guarantee you I'll bring that back.
That's awesome. What else, any other habits that you do regularly, try to do daily or regularly that really help you to perform at your highest level?
So for me right now, jujitsu I do basically every morning. So Monday through Saturday, I try and do jujitsu every single morning. That for me has been, I don't count that as my workout for like, that's not my strength training. That's just like, that's more for my mental health than anything else. Like, and cause I love it.
Yeah.
It's jujitsu for me has been such a learning experience. I look at that as mental health. I look at that as study time. I look at that as there's so much invested in why I do jujitsu outside of the physical and health benefits of it. And so for me, one of the greatest things, and I started doing it a little over 2 years ago now. And when my first coach told me something, he said, when you start your day trying to prevent someone from choking you out, every other obstacle you face that day seems relatively insignificant. And that's completely held true. Where like I start my day, literally yesterday, I got choked out like unconscious. So I wasn't even successful with preventing that. I got a little bit too cocky and I was like, I'm not going to tap. And then I very quickly, like guy got me in a baseball bat choke and was not good. I literally passed out, which has only happened 3 times in 2 years. But basically for me, that's my mental exercise where everything I do throughout the rest of the day, it's like, cool, I got through someone trying to kill me. I'm fine. And so that for me is that. But for some people, maybe it doesn't have to be jujitsu. It could be working out. It could be reading a book. It could be anything. But I do think for whatever it's worth, there's something to waking up and doing something hard. Like there's something to getting up and forcing yourself to do something that is scary, that is difficult and challenging to start your day. I think whatever that is for you, it's very important that someone has that.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad you said it that way, right? Like getting up and doing something difficult, because that can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. Like, for example, journaling for some people, like I have a particular journaling practice, which for me isn't as much work oriented, but it's more like kind of like dumping the craziness out of my head and getting it in some sort of, having a place for it. And that's sometimes hard, or writing myself. What I do is I write myself like a little letter as if I were my own coach or best friend. And,
Love that.
sometimes I'm hard on myself or sometimes I'm really loving of myself, but that's hard. It's something hard. For other people, it might be a cold plunge, right? It might be getting into a 40-degree bathtub and holding yourself in there for a few minutes. I mean, that's hard. And speaking of like thinking like you might die of like hyperthermia or something like that, so it can look a lot of different ways, but I like the way that you put it. And I've never really thought about it in that way particularly, but doing something difficult and knocking that out right at the beginning of the day.
I was talking about this with my buddy, Mike. We've spoken about this a lot, but there's something about responsibility that makes you a better individual, where you take on a responsibility, where you have to take on a load in order to like you have to bear a load on your back. You have to carry it. And for example, you hear a lot of people talk about when they have a kid, they completely change because like having the responsibility to take care of something like that big of a responsibility really put them in a position where like I need to make this change for them. And I very much believe whether it's jujitsu, whether it's journaling, whether it's painting, whether it's whatever, ice plunge, when you wake up with the feeling of I have a responsibility to do this, it does make you a better person when you see that responsibility through. And it allows you to become to continue to be a better person throughout your day. And when you practice that every single day, it makes you more regimented and it allows you to live up to your highest expectation of yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And you just structure any kind of structure. I think people do better with some
Yeah.
confines and some structure. I've seen it time and time again. People, why are weekends like the hardest for a lot of people? Because it's that free, unstructured time, the no obligations, the no responsibilities. They kind of just fall off the rails that way. But if they're
Yeah.
busy from like 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night, they seem to they get all their habits in and they do all the healthy things themselves because busy people get more done.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm sure, do you listen to Jordan Peterson at all?
I do. Yeah. From time to time, I've listened to him quite a bit.
Man, I love that guy. And, he has a really funny clip talking about routine he's such an intelligent, smart guy. And I love what he says. Also, his voice is funny, like just like his mannerisms and the way he talks.
That Canadian
there's
thing.
just one amazing clip where he was like, "Oh, you think you can function without a routine? Haha, good luck. Good luck with that." And he just went off talking about how important routine is. And I was like, I completely agree that the times when I was the most productive and the most focused is when I have a routine.
So going back to the jujitsu thing, because so I used to practice jujitsu also. It's been a while, but one of the things that I love about it, like you mentioned, it's not just a physical thing. In fact, I would being an athletic, physical person, like I wrestled also as a kid. It hurt me in jujitsu because you're too aggressive, you're too tight. But the guys, the brown belts and the black belts just laugh at guys like me because they're just gonna lay there, relax, and just wait for me to put my hand in the wrong place. And next thing I'm armbarred or I'm choked or whatever. But it goes back to what you were saying earlier about I didn't do it in the morning, but now I wish I had because it's like it is like a puzzle, right? It's a mental, it's way more mental than it is physical. And so I think that's really
Absolutely.
cool that you look at it like that. And I do recommend anyone listening, if you haven't done any type of like jujitsu or submission wrestling or something like that, I mean, these are skills that I think everybody needs to have.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. For the mental aspect, the physical aspect, even just like the confidence of being able to walk around and know that worst comes to worst, you can keep yourself safe. And I say that very deliberately because when you learn, listen, I've boxed before. I want to do Muay Thai. I love those sports and I think they're amazing. But you can't punch someone and not hurt them. Never mind yourself, right? You can't kick someone in the head to defend yourself and not have an injury to one, if not both people. When you learn jujitsu, you have the power to choose if you hurt someone or not. So when I say like you have the ability to keep yourself safe, worst comes to worst, you can control a situation to the point at which you aren't hurt and the person who was attacking you wasn't hurt, unless like they need to be hurt for whatever the situation is. But sometimes, we see videos online of maybe someone who has a mental disability attacking someone and they get knocked out. And it's like, that would have been so much better if you could control them to the ground and keep them safe because they weren't aware of what they were doing. They were not aware of it. And by knocking them out, you cause way more damage. And then there's lawsuits and all this other stuff. Whereas if you can control them, get them on the ground and keep them and yourself safe, you have that option with jujitsu. It's such an important skill for people to learn.
Yeah. And you can't say enough about having the confidence of even maybe that situation never happens to you, right? Let's just say that you never are in a situation to protect yourself. But the confidence with being able to, because how many people avoid particular situations or particular areas or anything? Like how many people out of fear just don't put themselves, but having the confidence of knowing that you could take care of yourself probably serves you in way more things than just self-defense.
100%. And you bring up a good point. So there was a study recently a study of where psychologists and psychiatrists went into the prison system to talk to repeat violent offenders, of people who are criminals and thugs and all this stuff, and they were talking to them about who they how they picked their targets. How did they pick the people they were going to rob, they were going to hurt, whatever it was. And they didn't have an idea. They didn't say like, well, this is who we would choose. They just said they knew who they wouldn't choose. And the people who they would not choose were the people who walked around, who were aware, who had their eyes up, who looked confident in themselves. Whereas the people who were looking down, maybe a little bit more hunched over, clearly more visibly vulnerable targets, that's who they would go after. And the confidence that you gain from learning self-defense, like jujitsu, wrestling, whatever it is, it allows you to stand up straight. It allows you to keep your eyes forward because you're not trying to hide anymore. You have the visible characteristics of someone confident in their ability to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't know that about the study that you just mentioned, but wow, for no better other reason, people should really learn how to defend themselves just so they're not making themselves a target,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. So, the other two tenets of this podcast are, that we haven't already talked about are deep human connection and self-actualization. Either one of those things resonating with you right now, deep human connection or self-actualization?
Both, man. I think they're both super important. I love, like, I haven't heard anyone say that those are such important tenets, but like, I love that you've made that such an important tenet.
Are you a newlywed or are you been married for a little while?
We got married in August, so we're pretty new.
Pretty new. Okay, what's that like? Talk about deep human connection. How has that been for you? What's the experience?
It's funny. So we've been together, I think we're going on 5 years now in May. So we've been together for a while. We moved in before we were married. That was just something I was like, I'm not going to marry someone before I live with. That's just
probably smart.
I want to know what this is going to be like. So not much has changed from the perspective of our daily life. But, we are religious, we're Jewish, and there's something that you do before you get married. Oftentimes it'll just be the woman, but sometimes the man will do it as well. And I opted to do it where it's something where you go into what's called a mikveh, which is basically just a bath. And, in Christianity, people will get baptized, and that actually comes from the mikveh. And so when you do this whole ritual where you go into this bath, which is a natural pool of water, and you go through this whole process, and the whole idea is that when you come out of that bath before you get married, you're cleaning yourself off, you're cleansing yourself to the point where it's like you are going into this relationship brand new. You're going into this brand new, and everything you do going forward is now going to set the tone for the relationship that you have with this person. And that was actually a very transformative moment for me in terms of how I viewed the relationship. Because it's one thing that, just you're with someone for a number of years, then you get married. But to look at it as like, this is a demarcation point in our relationship where it's like now something new is starting and a new relationship is starting within a relationship that we've already had. That was very important for me. And just getting married and making that lifelong commitment has been, it's almost been a huge stress relief, to be honest. There's just been something where it's just like, this is just nice. It's just nice to like not be looking, it's like you're done, and I think a lot of guys, especially, they get worried about it. They're like, wait, so this is the only person I'm going to be with. And I think that's a normal and a rational and an understandable fear. But no one ever told me about how nice it feels to just be done with that. Like it's a very comforting, nice feeling to know that this is your person and you don't have to be looking anymore.
Yeah, and I love the ritual that you just talked about where it was like this cleansing and this starting new, because one of the real challenges of any kind of relationship, whether it be romantic or friendship or anything, is that you are we always bring our past into the situation. You're carrying baggage and trauma, things into it, and it makes relationships hard. So I like that symbology of like, okay, we're we're now unifying ourselves and we're cleansing ourselves of some of that stuff, and we're moving together in the same direction.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I love that.
Awesome. Well, we're pretty much at the end of our time. I want to finish where I started with just a massive amount of gratitude. I learned from the content that you put out there. I learned from you today. I know people are going to learn from you, and I'm just grateful there's people out there like you who really care enough about people to give them the real deal information and just great content.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. This has been a wonderful time, a conversation. If you end up in Dallas, let me know. I'd love to go out, grab some beers with you. And if I'm in Austin, I'll definitely let you know.
Yeah, we'll have to roll. We'll have to roll or something if you're in town, or I'll come up there and
let's
check you out.
do it, man. That'd be amazing.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again. We will put all of your social media channels. I have your website and your Instagram. Is there any other channel that you want people to know about? We'll post it in the notes.
If you Google my name, Jordan Syatt, my podcast, Instagram, all that will come up.
Awesome. Okay. Well, pleasure to sit down and talk with you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Appreciate you being on the show.
Likewise, man.